What if the first step to transforming your life was as simple as making your bed? It sounds too easy, doesn't it? But that's exactly where this journey begins. A single, small act that seems almost irrelevant. Yet it's the foundation for something much greater, because in a world filled with distractions, uncertainty, and pressure, simple routines can become anchors, habits that ground you, actions that shape your mindset, and it starts right where you wake up. Make Your Bed by Admiral William H. McRaven is not just a book of advice. It's a collection of hard-earned lessons from one of the world's most disciplined and courageous leaders, offering 10 simple principles that can change your life, one day at a time. Today, we'll explore those principles, not as abstract concepts, but as real transformations through the story of someone who could be any one of us. So whether you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or simply in search of something more, this is a message you need to hear, because this is more than a summary. It's a turning point. Welcome to Book Play, where we turn powerful books into powerful life changers. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss a life-changing lesson from the books that can transform your mindset. Lucas is 27 years old and works as an emergency room nurse in one of the busiest hospitals in the city. His shifts often last 12 to 14 hours, filled with constant demands, treating critically ill patients, calming anxious families, and managing unexpected crises. It's a job that requires not only skill, but also emotional strength and resilience. When Lucas first chose nursing, it wasn't a fallback or a convenience. It was a calling shaped by a personal experience. As a teenager, he witnessed the impact of a compassionate nurse during a family health emergency. That nurse's calm, steady presence inspired him. He wanted to be that person who could bring hope and stability when everything else felt chaotic. But years later, that original purpose feels distant. The daily grind has worn him down. The relentless pace of the ER, the difficult cases, the moments when lives hang in the balance, they take a toll. Lucas often feels like he's running on empty, physically and mentally exhausted by the time he gets home. His small apartment reflects this weariness. The bed is usually unmade, laundry piles up in the corner, and dishes sit in the sink longer than they should. It's not neglect, it's fatigue. The constant pressure leaves little energy for anything beyond basic survival. Social invitations go unanswered, and his phone is filled with unread messages from friends and family who worry about him. Despite all this, Lucas still shows up. He does his job well, with professionalism and care. But inside, a quiet voice tells him he's losing his way. The goals he once dreamed of, specializing in trauma care, joining an international medical team, or advancing his career, seem like distant stars he can no longer reach. He tries to push through the fatigue and doubt. He tells himself, "This is what I signed up for. People need me. I can't quit." But beneath that determination lies a growing sense of emptiness, a creeping loss of confidence and direction. One particularly long night shift marks a turning point. Lucas works through multiple emergencies, experiencing the heartbreak of losing 3 patients. There's no time for breaks, no chance to eat. When the sun rises, he finally steps out of the hospital, drained and overwhelmed. At home, he collapses at his kitchen table, unable to sleep. Looking for something, anything, to distract his restless mind, he opens YouTube. Among the recommended videos, one stands out. A man in military uniform delivering a speech with calm authority. The title reads, "If you want to change your life, start by making your bed." Curious despite himself, Lucas clicks play. The speaker is Admiral William H. McRaven, a former Navy SEAL, sharing lessons learned from rigorous training in combat. His message is simple but powerful. Small, disciplined actions can lead to meaningful change. Starting the day by making your bed creates a sense of accomplishment and control, even when everything else feels chaotic. Lucas listens intently, feeling a flicker of something he hasn't felt in a long time: hope. The speech isn't about empty motivation. It's about practical steps to rebuild confidence and purpose, one small action at a time. Moved, Lucas looks up the book based on the speech. Make your bed. Little things that can change your life, and maybe the world. The next day, he orders a copy. When the book arrives, Lucas holds it in his hands, noticing its modest size and straightforward cover. It doesn't promise instant transformation. Instead, it offers 10 simple principles grounded in real experience. Sitting alone in his apartment, Lucas opens the first page. It's a quiet moment, unremarkable to anyone else, but for him, it's the first step toward reclaiming his life. In that moment, surrounded by fatigue and uncertainty, Lucas feels something shift, not a sudden breakthrough, but a gentle nudge forward, the beginning of a journey from exhaustion to resilience, from doubt to purpose. And with that small, hopeful act, Lucas starts to read. Make your bed. Little things that can change your life. And Maybe the World is a book by Admiral William H. McRaven, a retired Navy SEAL whose life experience shapes every page. The book distills powerful lessons from his time in one of the world's toughest military training programs and his decades of service in some of the most challenging environments imaginable. At its core, Make Your Bed is about the extraordinary impact of small, disciplined habits. It reminds us that the little choices we make each day, no matter how simple or mundane, lay the foundation for bigger successes. The message is both practical and profound. Start your day by making your bed, and you set the tone for accomplishment, resilience, and control over your life. McRaven's lessons don't rely on abstract theories or complicated strategies. Instead, they emerge from real stories, his own and those of his fellow SEALs, illustrating values like courage, perseverance, teamwork, and humility. These are qualities anyone can cultivate, regardless of their background or profession. Why is this book so impactful? Because it takes the intimidating idea of life transformation and breaks it down into manageable, actionable steps. It's a blueprint for overcoming challenges, building confidence, and staying focused, even when life feels overwhelming. For someone like Lucas, working long, exhausting shifts in a high-pressure job, these lessons resonate deeply. They offer a way to regain control, even in small ways, and rebuild a sense of purpose from the ground up. Throughout the book, McRaven shares 10 essential principles. Make your bed every morning. Find someone to help you paddle. Measure a person by the size of their heart, not their flippers. Get over being a sugar cookie. Don't be afraid of the circuses. Slide down the obstacle head first. Don't back down from the sharks. Be your very best in your darkest moments. Start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. Don't ever, ever ring the bell. Each lesson is tied to a story from McRaven's own experiences, teaching us how discipline, courage, and perseverance can carry us through the toughest moments. As Lucas begins reading, these lessons slowly start to weave their way into his daily life. They offer a new perspective, one grounded in action, responsibility, and hope. What follows is a journey not only through the book's wisdom, but through Lucas's transformation as he learns to apply these principles step by step. Lesson number 1. Make your bed every morning. Make your bed every morning. This simple, seemingly trivial task is the foundation of discipline and success. For Lucas, mornings were a chaotic scramble. He had just wrapped up a particularly grueling week at the hospital. His shifts were long, the patients demanding, and there was no time to rest. On most mornings, he would wake up late, hurriedly throw on his scrubs and rush out the door, leaving his bed unmade, his room in disarray. It wasn't just the physical clutter. It mirrored how he felt inside. His mind was cluttered, overwhelmed, and disoriented. He was struggling to keep up, let alone stay in control. The idea of making his bed, as McRaven suggested, seemed laughable at first. What difference could such a small, mundane act make in the bigger scheme of things? Lucas had much more pressing issues to focus on. His career, his social life, his sense of purpose, all of them felt like they were in turmoil. Could making a bed really help him tackle these larger problems? But as he read McRaven's words, something shifted. McRaven explained that making your bed is more than just about cleanliness. It's about taking control of the little things in life. It's a small task, yes, but one that gives you an immediate sense of accomplishment. By starting your day with something as simple as making your bed, you create order, even if everything else feels chaotic. This struck a chord with Lucas. He realized that by neglecting such a basic task, he was subconsciously starting his day in defeat. Leaving his bed unmade was like saying to himself, "I'm not in control." The day ahead will be just as messy as my room, but if he could change this small habit, it might be the first step in re-establishing some control over his life. The next morning, Lucas gave it a try. As soon as he woke up, he took a few extra minutes to straighten the sheets, fluff the pillows, and smooth out the blankets. It wasn't much, but the room instantly felt more organized, and for the first time in a long while, Lucas felt a flicker of pride. It wasn't about the bed itself, it was about the mindset that this one small act created. By completing this tiny task, Lucas was able to create momentum for the day. He began to realize that success wasn't just about big accomplishments, it was about building small, manageable wins that would compound over time. That one little victory early in the day gave him a sense of discipline and focus that would carry him through the rest of the day's challenges. And so, Lucas started doing this every day. Making his bed became a ritual, something to ground him in the midst of his often hectic life. It wasn't just a habit, it was a message to himself. I can control this moment. By starting small, he began to take ownership over the little parts of his life, and with each passing day, he found that making his bed was a metaphor for something much bigger. By taking care of the small things, he could build up to taking care of the larger, more overwhelming things in his life. When life feels overwhelming, we often think that we need to change everything at once, but it's in the small, daily actions that we find power. If you can master the little things, the big things start to fall into place. Lesson number 2. Find someone to help you paddle. Find someone to help you paddle. Success is never a solo endeavor. No matter how independent or capable you are, there will always be times when you need someone else to help you push forward. For Lucas, the idea of asking for help was difficult. As a doctor, he was trained to handle pressure on his own, to be the one others turned to for advice and guidance. The expectation was that he always had the answers. But as the stress of his work began to weigh on him, Lucas realized that he couldn't do it all alone. His team at the hospital was stretched thin, and it felt like every patient had more urgent needs than he could meet. His exhaustion was mounting, and despite his best efforts, he was starting to burn out. The pressure to perform, coupled with his desire to be the perfect doctor, made him reluctant to ask for help. He believed that doing it alone would prove his strength and competence. But then, he remembered McRaven's lesson. During his training, McRaven learned that even the toughest Navy SEALs could not succeed alone. In the most challenging moments of training, when the obstacles seemed impossible to overcome, there was always a partner to help them. Whether it was someone to paddle alongside you through the grueling water challenges, or a teammate to lift you when you're physically and mentally drained, the SEALs understood the power of collaboration. This resonated deeply with Lucas. He realized that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of wisdom. No one can shoulder every responsibility alone, and in trying to do so, he was only setting himself up for failure. One evening, after a particularly difficult shift, Lucas reached out to his colleague, Sarah, who had also been working long hours. They talked openly about their struggles and frustrations, something Lucas rarely did. To his surprise, Sarah not only listened but offered her help. She suggested they create a more efficient system for managing patient care and that they both take turns during the busiest shifts so neither of them would be overwhelmed. The relief Lucas felt after this conversation was immediate. Just knowing that he had a supportive partner in the fight against burnout was a game changer. It wasn't that Sarah could solve all his problems, but her willingness to share the load allowed him to breathe again. This lesson taught him that it was okay to lean on others. In fact, finding someone to help you paddle, whether in work, personal struggles, or life, can turn the tide when things feel overwhelming. It creates a partnership, a shared responsibility, and a strength that is far greater than what you can achieve alone. For Lucas, the next morning felt different. He no longer felt like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. With Sarah's support, he had a renewed sense of purpose and a clearer plan of action. He was ready to face the day with the confidence that comes from knowing that no matter how tough it gets, he's not alone. By reaching out, Lucas had not only found a partner, he had unlocked the power of teamwork, which would prove essential as he continued to navigate his career and personal growth. The burden was lighter, and the journey seemed much more possible. Lesson number 3. Measure a person by the size of their heart, not their flippers. Measure a person by the size of their heart, not their flippers. In life, it's not the external qualities or the flashy accomplishments that matter most, but the inner strength, character, and heart that define who you truly are. Lucas was feeling the weight of expectations. As a young doctor, he often felt like he was being measured by the results he could show, the number of successful surgeries, the speed at which he could diagnose a condition, and the impressive number of hours he'd worked. Everyone around him seemed to be focused on outward accomplishments, on what you could see, what you could measure on paper. But deep down, Lucas felt a gnawing sense that something was missing. Success wasn't just about what could be counted, it was about who you were on the inside. McRaven's lesson came to him at the perfect time. He recalled how, during Navy SEAL training, recruits were often judged by their physical abilities, how fast they could run, how many push-ups they could do, how efficiently they could complete the demanding obstacle courses. But in reality, those who succeeded weren't always the fastest or the strongest. They were the ones who had the heart to endure, the determination to push through when the going got tough. The SEALs learned that character, resilience, teamwork, and grit mattered far more than outward appearances or temporary victories. Lucas began to see the parallels between the lessons in the book and the pressures he faced in his own life. He was constantly evaluating himself and others by what he could see on the surface, how well he performed in front of his colleagues, how impressive his achievements seemed on paper. But what McRaven was teaching him was that the true measure of a person lies beneath the surface, in the size of their heart, their perseverance, and their ability to keep going when everything else falls apart. One night, Lucas stayed late at the hospital after his shift to check in on a patient who had been struggling. He had already completed his rounds, but something about the patient's situation tugged at him. When he arrived, he saw his patient, an elderly woman, lying alone in a sterile room looking tired but determined. Lucas didn't need to see a medal, a diploma, or a resume to know this woman had lived a life filled with grit and perseverance. Her frailty in that moment didn't diminish the strength she had shown throughout her life. As he spoke with her, he realized that her true strength wasn't something he could measure in terms of hospital records or test results. It was in her resilience, her ability to continue moving forward even when things got difficult, her unwavering spirit that radiated in the smallest of moments. Her heart was what mattered, not how many years she had been alive, not how physically strong she was. For Lucas, this lesson became a turning point. He realized that his own worth and the worth of others wasn't measured by how impressive his credentials were, how many hours he worked, or how quickly he could solve a problem. It was about the heart, the commitment, the dedication, and the compassion that he put into everything he did. The next morning, Lucas made a conscious choice. He would no longer evaluate himself or others solely based on external success. Whether it was in his personal life, his relationships, or his career, he would focus on what truly mattered, the heart behind the actions. And slowly, Lucas started to shift his perspective. Instead of feeling inferior because he wasn't always the fastest or most successful, he began to embrace the idea that his heart, the effort, care, and determination he brought to everything was what would ultimately define him. Lesson number 4. Get over being a sugar cookie. Get over being a sugar cookie. The phrase is a powerful reminder that life doesn't always go the way we expect. Sometimes we're asked to endure hardships that don't seem fair, and often the things we work hardest for don't come with immediate rewards. But as McRaven points out, it's in these moments that we discover who we really are. Lucas was starting to experience his own version of the sugar cookie moment. As a young doctor in a competitive field, he often found himself in situations that felt unearned, where he worked long hours with little recognition, made tough decisions with no visible rewards, and sometimes felt that his efforts were undervalued. He couldn't understand why some of his colleagues, who perhaps weren't as dedicated, seemed to get ahead while he was left behind. The feeling of being unfairly treated became a heavy weight on his shoulders, and Lucas often wondered if he was cut out for the demanding path he had chosen. It was then that he thought back to McRaven's words, "Get over being a sugar cookie." The phrase came from the grueling Navy SEAL training, where recruits were sometimes forced to run extra miles, carry heavy loads, or complete physically demanding tasks for no apparent reason other than to build mental toughness. The sugar cookie lesson involved being forced to do things that felt pointless or humiliating. At one point, the recruits were asked to run through the sand with their uniforms soaked, making them look like sugar cookies, covered in sand, uncomfortable, and exposed. The lesson, McRaven explains, is that life is full of moments where you feel like you've been given the short end of the stick. But instead of complaining or giving up, you need to push through. As Lucas reflected on this, he realized that he had been viewing his challenges all wrong. Every hour he spent in the hospital without recognition, every difficult case where he didn't get immediate credit, was an opportunity for growth. These were his sugar cookie moments, those times when he was forced to endure discomfort for the sake of something greater. And instead of feeling frustrated or defeated by them, he could choose to embrace them as opportunities to build resilience and perseverance. One evening, after a particularly long shift, Lucas overheard a senior doctor speaking about a difficult case he had just completed. The senior doctor, despite facing significant challenges, had handled the situation with grace and calm. He wasn't looking for praise or recognition. He had done his job, and that was enough. In that moment, Lucas realized that success and growth didn't always come with immediate applause or accolades. Sometimes the greatest lessons and achievements came from the hardest moments, the ones where you weren't seeking validation or external recognition, but instead simply pushing through the discomfort. Lucas took this lesson to heart. He stopped expecting praise for every little task and began focusing on the bigger picture. He learned to find satisfaction in the effort itself, knowing that each challenging day, each unrecognized task, was an opportunity to grow stronger. It wasn't about getting through the easy days. It was about pushing through when things were tough and accepting that life sometimes requires you to do things that don't seem fair. McRaven's lesson helped Lucas shift his mindset. Instead of feeling like a victim of unfair circumstances, he started seeing himself as someone who could rise above them. The discomfort, the challenges, the moments that felt like sugar cookie punishments, they were all part of the process of becoming stronger, mentally tougher, and more resilient. Lesson number 5, don't fear the circumstances. Don't fear the circumstances. Life is unpredictable, and no matter how well we plan, things often don't go the way we expect. The true test of character, McRaven argues, is not how we react when everything is going according to plan, but how we rise to the challenge when faced with unexpected or difficult circumstances. For Lucas, this lesson hit hard during a particularly difficult night at the hospital. One of his patients, a young woman with a complicated condition, had deteriorated quickly. Despite his best efforts, her health was rapidly declining, and Lucas found himself in a situation where the outcome was uncertain. There was nothing more he could do, and yet he felt the weight of his responsibility heavier than ever. As the hours passed, his thoughts spiraled into doubt. Was he doing enough? Was he prepared for this? What if he failed her? The fear of failure and the uncertainty of the situation paralyzed him for a moment. It was easy to feel overwhelmed, to want to give in to the fear of making the wrong decision. But McRaven's words echoed in his mind, "Don't fear the circumstances." Just as Navy SEALs were taught to face extreme conditions without fear, Lucas realized that he too needed to confront uncertainty with courage and resolve. He couldn't control everything. Life, death, and illness were beyond his power, but he could control how he responded. McRaven's teaching came from his own experience during SEAL training, where recruits were regularly put in life-threatening situations. There was no time to fear the circumstances, only to act. In those high-stakes situations, the difference between success and failure wasn't the fear itself, but the ability to push through the fear and keep moving forward. With that in mind, Lucas gathered his thoughts, re-examined the patient's condition, and focused on the tools at his disposal. He communicated with his team and remained calm in the face of uncertainty. It wasn't about having all the answers, but about maintaining the clarity and focus necessary to make decisions in a difficult situation. His fear didn't disappear, but he learned to move forward with it, rather than letting it control him. The patient ultimately stabilized, and though it was a tense moment, Lucas realized that this experience had shown him something deeper than medical expertise. It had shown him the power of mental strength. Fear was inevitable, but how he responded to it was his choice. The circumstances he feared were out of his hands, but his ability to persevere in the face of them was completely within his control. Lucas took this lesson with him beyond the hospital. In his personal life, he faced difficult conversations and challenges that seemed impossible to navigate. But instead of backing down or running from uncomfortable situations, he began to face them head-on. The fear of failure or confrontation no longer paralyzed him. He understood that fear was simply a part of the process, and overcoming it didn't mean getting rid of it. It meant learning to walk through it with determination. This mindset shift changed everything. Lucas no longer saw challenging circumstances as things to be avoided or feared. He began to see them as opportunities to grow, to test his limits, and to prove to himself what he was capable of. Lesson number 6. Slide down the obstacle head first. Slide down the obstacle head first. McRaven uses this metaphor to illustrate a powerful concept. Sometimes in life, the best way forward is to embrace challenges directly, even if it seems risky. Instead of avoiding discomfort or trying to avoid obstacles, real growth comes from throwing yourself into them, head first. Lucas was about to face a similar challenge in his life. As a rising star in the medical field, he had become known for his ability to handle high-pressure situations. However, there was one aspect of his job that terrified him: public speaking. Whether it was presenting a case in front of a group of colleagues or teaching younger residents, Lucas froze every time he had to speak in public. The mere thought of standing in front of a crowd filled him with dread. He avoided opportunities to present whenever he could, but deep down, he knew this was a weakness he couldn't keep running from. It wasn't just about speaking. It was about facing his fear of failure, of being judged, of making mistakes in front of others. Every time he took a step back, the fear only grew stronger. One day, during a staff meeting, the head of his department asked him to present a new treatment protocol to the team. It was an important moment in his career, but the fear overwhelmed him. He felt paralyzed, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. But then, McRaven's words came to mind. Slide down the obstacle head first. McRaven recounts how, during Navy SEAL training, recruits faced numerous obstacles designed to test their bravery and determination. One obstacle involved sliding down a steep, rocky hill head first. It was terrifying, the kind of challenge you'd want to avoid, but McRaven's point was clear. The only way to truly overcome these fears was to dive straight into them, even if it felt uncomfortable. There's no time to hesitate. You must act and trust that you'll handle it when you get there. With this in mind, Lucas made a decision. Instead of trying to avoid the presentation or back out, he leaned into the fear. He knew that avoiding it wasn't an option if he wanted to grow. So, when the day came, he took a deep breath and walked up to the front of the room. His heart raced and his hands were shaking, but he began speaking, even though his voice felt weak at first. As he kept talking, his nerves slowly began to settle. He realized that the world wasn't going to end if he made a mistake, and the fear of failure didn't hold the same weight once he faced it. By the end of the presentation, not only had he made it through, but the feedback he received was overwhelmingly positive. More importantly, Lucas learned that sometimes the biggest hurdle is simply stepping into the challenge. What he'd feared for so long, the obstacle that seemed insurmountable, had turned out to be something he could conquer simply by sliding down it head first. And after that experience, Lucas felt stronger, knowing he could tackle any uncomfortable situation in the future. The fear was always there, but he had the power to move through it. Lesson number 7. Don't back down from the sharks. Don't back down from the sharks. In the metaphorical sense, the sharks represent the challenges, fears, and dangerous situations we often face in life. Things that intimidate us, things we may want to avoid. But McRaven's lesson is clear. Facing those sharks head-on instead of retreating is where true growth begins. For Lucas, this lesson emerged during a particularly challenging period of his medical career. He had just been promoted to a position where he was tasked with managing a large team in a high-stakes environment. It was a significant leap from the clinical work he was accustomed to, and Lucas found himself overwhelmed. The demands were constant, the expectations were high, and there were moments when he felt out of his depth. But what terrified him the most were the sharks that appeared in the form of senior physicians and hospital administrators. These were powerful figures in the medical community, and their opinions carried weight. Lucas found himself second-guessing every decision, fearful of making a mistake that might result in disapproval or worse, damage to his reputation. One day, the hospital was faced with a complex case involving a rare condition. Lucas was tasked with leading the treatment plan. As he looked around the room, the faces of the senior doctors seemed to loom over him like sharks circling their prey, ready to pounce at any misstep. He could feel the pressure mounting. Every word he said was being scrutinized, and every decision he made was being weighed. In that moment, Lucas remembered McRaven's advice. Don't back down from the sharks. This wasn't just about physical danger. It was about facing his fears and stepping up to the challenges that seemed overwhelming. It was about not letting the intimidating presence of others dictate his actions. Instead of retreating or deferring to others, Lucas took a deep breath and spoke with clarity. He outlined his treatment plan with confidence and backed it up with research, relying on his training and knowledge. Throughout the meeting, there were moments when doubt crept in, but he reminded himself that this was his opportunity to stand firm. He couldn't back down. If he wanted to lead and grow, he had to face the sharks, not run from them. As the discussion continued, Lucas found that the more he faced his fears, the more control he regained. His confidence grew, and soon the sharks in the room were no longer intimidating. They were simply people, and they were listening to his ideas. In the end, his plan was approved, and the case turned out successfully. More importantly, Lucas had faced a huge fear and emerged stronger. He realized that in life, the sharks would always be there, whether they came in the form of criticism, tough situations, or people who seemed more powerful. The key wasn't avoiding them. It was learning how to face them without backing down. Lesson number 8. Be your very best in your darkest moments. This lesson speaks to the essence of character, how we show up when things aren't going well. It's easy to be calm, composed, and at our best when life is smooth, but the true test of our capabilities and resolve comes when we're faced with adversity. For Lucas, this lesson became a crucial turning point during one of the most challenging moments of his career. He was nearing the end of his residency and had been assigned to oversee a team during an especially difficult and emotionally charged case. A young patient had been admitted with a rare and life-threatening illness. The team worked tirelessly, but the prognosis grew worse with each passing day. The situation became more complicated as the patient's condition rapidly deteriorated. Lucas felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that his team was looking to him for leadership. Yet the emotional weight of the situation was overwhelming. On top of this, he was dealing with his own personal challenges: stress from the relentless hours at the hospital, pressure from senior physicians, and his lingering fear of failure. The emotional toll was starting to take its toll on him, and Lucas found himself questioning his ability to lead in such a dark moment. But then, McRaven's lesson resonated with him. Be your very best in your darkest moments. The key wasn't to retreat or give in to fear. It was to rise to the occasion and act with integrity, compassion, and strength, even when the outcome seemed uncertain. Lucas knew that his team was depending on him for guidance and stability. The doctors, nurses, and staff were feeling the strain as well. They were tired, stressed, and emotional. But Lucas remembered that this was his moment to lead, not just with his medical knowledge, but with his presence. It was time to be the calm in the storm, to focus on the small victories in each moment, and to give his team hope even when hope seemed in short supply. He gathered his team and calmly reassessed the treatment plan, making adjustments where necessary. His leadership in that moment was defined not by his knowledge or skill alone, but by his ability to stay composed and focused despite the chaos around him. He made decisions based on logic and compassion, while also taking the time to reassure the team that they were doing everything they could. Though the outcome of the patient's case was still uncertain, Lucas found that his role as a leader became clearer. By focusing on his team and their collective effort, instead of letting the weight of the situation break him, he was able to inspire others to continue pressing forward. Even in the darkest moments, Lucas discovered that his best could shine through, not through perfection, but through calm, thoughtful action. This lesson became a cornerstone of his career. He learned that leadership, especially in times of crisis, isn't about having all the answers. It's about being present, being calm, and demonstrating resilience, no matter how bleak the circumstances. Lesson number 9. Start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. This lesson is about maintaining optimism and finding strength in difficult situations, especially when everything seems to be falling apart. The metaphor of being up to your neck in mud refers to the times when you're stuck in challenges, overwhelmed by obstacles and buried under adversity. Yet McRaven teaches us that in these moments, it's essential not to lose hope or give in to despair. Instead, you should keep going, and sometimes even find the courage to sing. For Lucas, this lesson hit home during a particularly grueling time in his medical career. After the intense experience of managing the difficult case in his residency, he faced an even greater challenge, a hospital-wide staffing shortage that put even more pressure on the entire medical team. There were fewer hands to help, more patients to treat, and everyone was feeling the strain. The work was endless, the hours long, and the exhaustion seemed to take its toll on the morale of the team. It felt like they were up to their necks in mud, stuck in a situation where they had no control, facing obstacles at every turn. Lucas was beginning to feel the weight of the burden. He could feel the fatigue in his body. the emotional strain of constantly being on, and the overwhelming sense of helplessness as the problems kept piling up. But in the midst of all this, Lucas recalled McRaven's powerful metaphor: start singing when you're up to your neck in mud. Singing, in this case, didn't literally mean belting out a tune. It was about maintaining a positive, resilient mindset when faced with adversity. It was about finding a way to keep moving forward with a sense of purpose, no matter how difficult the situation seemed. One day, as Lucas walked into the chaotic emergency room, he found himself at a crossroads. He could either give in to the fatigue and stress, allowing it to impact his performance, or he could choose to sing in the metaphorical sense, by maintaining a calm and positive outlook, by encouraging his team, and by finding small victories in the daily grind. He chose to sing. Lucas focused on what was within his control, encouraging his team to take small breaks, reminding them of the meaningful work they were doing, and sharing moments of humor and light-heartedness where possible. He also reminded himself and his colleagues to keep an eye on the long-term goal, the reason they were doing this in the first place, to help their patients and improve lives. Even though the situation was overwhelming, Lucas found that by keeping his attitude positive and lifting others' spirits, the mud didn't feel quite as deep. The challenge didn't go away overnight, but Lucas began to see that, just as McRaven suggested, when you choose to keep moving forward with optimism, the adversity becomes more bearable. The mood in the hospital shifted slightly as well. The team started to pull together more cohesively, finding new ways to manage the overwhelming workload. Even when things didn't improve quickly, the sense of camaraderie and resilience gave everyone a sense of purpose. Lucas learned that, much like the SEALs who trained through brutal conditions, the key to surviving and thriving in tough times wasn't just about pushing through. It was about doing so with a mindset that focused on progress, not perfection, and optimism, not despair. Lesson number 10, don't ever ring the bell. Don't ever ring the bell. This is perhaps one of the most powerful lessons from Make Your Bed, and it speaks to the core of perseverance and resilience. The bell is a metaphor for quitting, something that's often tempting in the face of hardship. In Navy SEAL training, recruits are given the option to quit at any time by ringing a bell, but once they do, it's over. McRaven's message is simple: don't give in to the temptation to quit, no matter how difficult things get. For Lucas, this lesson became crucial during the toughest period of his career. Having navigated the chaos of residency and proven himself in various high-pressure situations, Lucas had finally secured a role as a senior attending physician in a prestigious medical facility. The job came with a great deal of responsibility, but it also seemed to come with an endless string of challenges. From managing complex cases to handling administrative pressures, Lucas was often overwhelmed. At one point, he felt as though he had reached his breaking point. He was working tirelessly on a particularly challenging case involving a patient who had been diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of cancer. The family had no hope, and the prognosis was grim. Despite his efforts, Lucas could feel the emotional weight of the situation dragging him down. The fear of failure, the constant pressure from his colleagues and superiors, and the long hours of sleepless work made him question if he was capable of handling the responsibility. He felt like he was standing on the edge of burnout and was tempted to just walk away. In one particularly low moment, Lucas found himself alone in the hospital's break room, staring at a cup of cold coffee, wondering if he could keep going. That's when he remembered McRaven's words: don't ever ring the bell. In the SEALs, ringing the bell meant quitting, and for Lucas, quitting wasn't an option. He realized that no matter how difficult things were, quitting would mean letting down not only himself but his patients, his colleagues, and everyone who relied on him. It would be easier to give up, but it wouldn't be the right choice. Instead of quitting, Lucas chose to double down on his commitment to the work. He sought support from colleagues, practiced self-care and focused on the small tasks he could accomplish each day. Instead of letting himself be overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation, he broke the challenges down into manageable pieces. He reminded himself that even in his darkest moments, perseverance was the key to overcoming adversity. By refusing to ring the bell, Lucas found his way through the storm. He didn't solve every problem, but he faced the difficulties head-on with determination and strength. And in the end, his efforts paid off, not just in the successful treatment of his patient, but in his personal growth. He came to understand that life's most difficult moments are often the ones that shape us the most. When you refuse to quit, when you push through the challenges, you discover a resilience within yourself that you never knew existed. As we reflect on the life-changing lessons shared by Admiral William H. McRaven in Make Your Bed, it's clear that the principles he outlines are not just for Navy, SEALs, or extreme circumstances. They are universal truths that can shape anyone's life. These lessons teach us that success and personal growth don't come from grand dramatic moments, but from the small, consistent actions we take each day. They remind us that we're not defined by the challenges we face, but by how we respond to them. In Lucas's journey, we saw how embracing discipline, resilience, and persistence allowed him to navigate the toughest moments in his career. Whether it was embracing discomfort, taking responsibility, or finding strength in the darkest moments, each lesson added a layer to his transformation. And that transformation wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about showing up every day, doing the best he could, and growing from each experience. Lucas's story mirrors our own, doesn't it? We all encounter challenges, whether in our careers, our relationships, or within ourselves. There are times when we want to give up, when everything feels too overwhelming, and the temptation to quit seems easier than pressing on. But just like Lucas, we have the choice to rise above, to refuse to ring that bell, and to push forward even when it's hard. The simple act of making your bed every morning is a perfect place to start. It's not just about tidying up, it's a daily commitment to discipline, to order, to taking control of your day from the moment it begins. It symbolizes a decision to take pride in the small tasks, knowing that these lead to bigger victories. It's a small victory that becomes the foundation for larger ones. And that, McRaven tells us, is how we begin to change the world, one small, deliberate act at a time. So take a moment to reflect. What are the small actions you can begin with today? Maybe it's about committing to a daily routine, saying yes to discomfort, or choosing to lead even when you're unsure. Maybe it's just about taking the time to make your bed every morning, as simple as it seems, to remind yourself that you're in control. This journey of growth, transformation, and resilience is one that we all share. No one's path is without obstacles, but it's in those moments of struggle that our true character is formed. The key is never to back down, never to give up. No matter what you're facing, remember that each challenge is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become stronger. And when you feel like quitting, when it all feels too much, remember McRaven's words: don't ever, ever ring the bell. It's in those moments of doubt that the choice to keep going, to press forward, will shape who you become. If this message resonates with you, if you're ready to take that next step toward personal growth and mindset transformation, then consider subscribing to Bookplay. Here we break down powerful books like Make Your Bed and explore lessons that can help you not only overcome obstacles, but also build the mindset you need to succeed. Each video is crafted to inspire, motivate, and equip you with the tools you need to unlock your fullest potential. If you've enjoyed this journey through the book, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need a little encouragement. We all know how powerful a reminder can be, especially when we're on the edge of our own personal breakthrough. And by subscribing, you'll get new insights and actionable lessons from books that can transform the way you think, act, and live. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss out on our next life-changing video. Your journey to success and personal growth starts with that first small step. It starts today. So take that first action, no matter how small, and know that you're one step closer to becoming the person you've always wanted to be. Thank you for joining us at Book Play. Together, let's make the small decisions that lead to big changes. Let's stay committed, stay resilient, and keep moving forward. You've got this.